right, so we've already talked about wrapping up this dynamic hinge series that we've been doing this month. We've covered two really important topics with Trey and Amari, which is that start and finish position and how locking in those two can clean up what happens in the middle. And then that downward motion with the hip hinge while we're trying to generate power on the way down that you see in the ball slams or the skier with Amari. I want to add what makes the hinge dynamic and what separates it from being a strength movement versus a dynamic power movement, which is what we're looking for. A dynamic hinge isn't just fast, it's explosive. It's being able to transfer that tension with minimal pause. If a static hinge is about ownership and tension, then a dynamic hinge is about being able to transfer that tension as forcefully and as powerfully as we can. So thinking about things like the kettlebell swing, ski erg, explosive ball slams, even our cleans and snatches, and how those differ from our RDLs or our strength hinge movements, like our deadlifts. What separates those strength hinges from dynamic hinges is not just the speed, but what happens in that transition, right? So a dynamic hinge should be a load and then an immediate redirect, right? There's no sitting, there's no collapsing, there's no pausing. It's absorption in that hinge and then an immediate refire to generate that power, which happens in that transition. So the key when thinking about the transition is just remembering that dynamic doesn't mean loose. So when we're moving through these transitions of absorbing and redirecting power, we should still have stiffness, right? My lat should be engaged, my upper body should be nice and stiff. I'm just going to express it quickly now. If the tension and the stiffness start to break down in that transition, right? So if I go to load and hinge my hips back, but my shoulders are caved, my lats are disengaged, now my lower back's taking over, right? I'm losing all the power that's coming from my hips, and everything starts to break down. So it goes from being a power movement to a sloppy cardio session. Again, in that transition, we still need stiffness, we still need tension. Now we just have to express it aggressively, violently, with intention. Right, so that's the last part of this, is the intent behind a dynamic hinge. Right, you could have two people doing a kettlebell swing, and one is just thinking, swing that kettlebell, and things are loose and things are sloppy, right? And the other person is thinking, throw the floor to the wall behind me. So I'm hiking and loading my hips, and then I'm powerfully exploding, right? So getting our members to understand the intention that we're trying to have behind the movement on top of the movement itself, right? So those two members are doing the same movement, but they have different outputs, right? So coaching intent is what's gonna drive the power in these movements. When we're coaching these dynamic hinges, either tomorrow or next week, be looking for that transition. Is there a crisp hip snap? Are we immediately redirecting that force? Does it look violent but controlled? All right, so just an easy way to think about it, wrap things up. If it's slow, if the hip hinge is slow, it's strength. If it's sloppy, it's cardio. And if it's fast and aggressive and violent, it's a dynamic hinge.